Howdy, everyone. Frankie here, New West Reset. Hello, how's it going? Welcome back. Thank you very much for shooting in and joining a fella here for another one. Another live one, as a matter of fact. New West Reset Live, episode 183 here today. Today we're going to be looking at the Great Vancouver Fire of 1886. So we're going to be looking at some old photos from 1886 to 1900. Of course, we'll look into the official narrative, the official his story, top half of the show, and then we'll take a mid-show break and come back and we'll hook our ocular sphericals onto some old photographs. I'm telling you right now on today's show, we're fixing to check out probably the most ridiculous narrative surrounding a city fire, a great city fire that you've ever heard. So strap in. You might want to take a shot or two of whiskey or bourbon or vodka, tequila as I call it. Whatever your poison of preference is, because this is redonkulous. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me here today, Sunday, August the 9th, 2026. Just a wee bit past 5 p.m. local time, mountain time. As always, we're coming at you live from the foothills of the mountains, the Canadian Rocky Mountains. Coming at you from Calgary, Alberta, up in Canada land there, buddy. Beautiful day today. Sort of partly sunny, partly cloudy. 24 degrees Celsius right now. It's around 80-ish Fahrenheit. We had some rain and wind last night, cooled things down. Hopefully people that needed the rain got it. I hope you're all doing well. So links below for everything that we're going to cover. As mentioned, we're going to look into the Great Vancouver Fire of 1886. Links below as well for how you can get a hold of a fella. All my social media and all that, email and Instagram, BitChute, and of course YouTube and Rumble, as always. Broadcasting live simultaneously on the BitChute and the Rumble. So welcome. Thank you to everybody who's already shared, subscribed, and done all that good stuff. Appreciate you. If you're watching this after the live, thanks a lot there, eh? Thank you. Below as well, you'll find the link to my second channel, my new channel, New West Rewind. That's where you find all the old-timey vintage footage videos, except here on the Sunday live show. That's right. Our mid-show break is always old-timey vintage footage. We're going to be looking at footage of Vancouver for sure for the mid-show break. So again, thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed your weekend. Thanks for winding down the weekend here with yours truly on the Sunday Fun Day show there, eh, bud? Let me know how you're doing in the chat, in the box, as I like to call it. Let me know what you're doing, what you're up to, how you doing. Say howdy to everyone. Channel 53 is here. Good to see you, bud. Chassie Nick's in the box. Hello, Chassie. Kathy Broughton is here from Kentucky, the Bluegrass State. Hello, how you doing? Hello, neighbor. That's KJ, my neighbor here in Alberta. Just a few towns away. Good to see you. Did you get that rain up there, by the way? It was crazy and windy, too. I thought a tornado had touched down here for a second. I was getting all frightened and kerfuffled. Baja in the box. Hello, Baja. Good to see you. Old World, Michigan here as well. Hello, old friend of the channel. How you doing? Water the tree. That's Ross. Good to see you there, bud. How you doing? Neff Hunter. Hello. Howdy. Good to see you. Thanks for being here. There he is. Unfreemason. Known around these here parts as Cousin Vinny. That's Vincent. Yes, lived in Vancouver for a few times for a number of years. So, yeah, we've basically got a local Vancouverite who's now my buddy living here in Calgary. So, yeah, please sound off if you live in Vancouver or you have and you're very familiar, because today's topic with the Great Vancouver Fire of 1886 is redonkulous, I'm telling you. Anyways, good to see you there, Cousin Vinny. It's always good to have Cousin Vinny on the live show. You got Frankie Fingers here, and then you get some Cousin Vinny over here, too, huh? So, Tommy, where have you been, huh? I've been watching New West Reset, huh? Oh, you know, it's New West Reset. It's just thing on YouTube. He goes around, he does his boots on the ground thing. I'll tell you. Miriam is here as well. Hello, good to see you. How you doing? Hope you're doing okay over there. Way out over there. Across the pond, across the big pond. Good to see you, Ubu. Ubu Khan is here in the box. Howdy, howdy. Welcome. So again, thank you. Appreciate all your support. Thanks for being here. I've seen a lot of new faces, new friends here at the channel. So welcome. Thank you. I hope you enjoy everything on the channel. And, been doing it for a while now. So there's lots on the channel to look at. Old boots on the ground videos and live streams. So thank you. Thank you very much. Is that Ms. or Miss? I'm going to say Ms. I don't want to be too presumptuous. Ms. Sexy Beth. Yes, Sexy Beth. In the box. Hello, good to see you. There's Steve. Howdy, Steve. Hello, hello. Yes, he was 104 years young. Bless him. That's Steve's way of saying hello. Now, don't get your knickers in a knot now. Anyway, thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Might as well just get right into her there, bud. Let's look into the official history of the Great Vancouver Fire itself. You know what? Most folks, I'm sure, know where Vancouver is, or at least have heard of it. But let me at least just pull it up on the goggle machine on the map here, just in case. Just in case, you know what I'm saying? Some people might be like, Frankie, that's way over in Canada land. I live here in the Czech Republic there, bud. I don't know where that is. I've heard of it, but so I'm over here. You see, I'm over here in Calgary land. There's the Canadian Rockies here. Okay. So you gotta get across through this beautiful but deadly landscape. There's Vancouver right here, British Columbia, right on the shores of, technically it's the Pacific, but you have Vancouver Island here, of course, just a stone's throw from Seattle there, bud. So this is the area or the city that we're going to be looking at is right here. There you go, Vancouver. Lovely city. Very interesting city. A lot of crazy stuff going on there, as per usual. But, I mean, any big city's got crazy stuff going on. Who are we kidding here, right? What's that? There's a fake Vancouver down south. Oh, yeah, that's right. There's a Vancouver, Washington. That's right. So we don't want to confuse Vancouver, Washington, and Washington State in the good old US of A. We're talking about Vancouver, British Columbia, up here in Canada there, eh, bud? But I'm sure Vancouver, Washington also had Great Fire. It's your 44th birthday, really? Oh, happy birthday there, bud. Happy birthday to Steve. Hey? Zippity-doo! Happy birthday to you there, buddy. Nice. Yeah. Happy birthday. 44 years young. Spry fella. Quay tap. Old World Meekmock in the box. Hello, hello. Good to see you. Howdy, Odin. Odin's Raven is here, everybody. So yeah, that's where we're looking at. Vancouver, British Columbia, Canadian land. Not to be confused with Vancouver, Washington. Not to be confused with Vancouver Island, because the city of Vancouver is not on the island called Vancouver. It's on the mainland, which isn't called the mainland. It's called British Columbia. But you refer to it as the mainland if you're from Vancouver Island. But Vancouver Island has the capital city, which is not Vancouver, because Vancouver is not on the island. The capital city is Victoria, Vancouver Island. But we're talking about the city of Vancouver, but not Washington. Not Washington, D.C., mind you, Washington State, you see. So it's Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. There. Everybody's got it now. I didn't make it more confusing at all. Let's see what Wikipedia says about this thing here, shall we? What do you think? If you're new here and you're like, Frankie, why are you going to the Wikipedia? It's BS. Exactly. But this is what most folks do when they want to look something up on the Goggle machine. They type it in, Great Vancouver Fire. And, you know, the first result usually, top 3 results anyway, is going to be Wikipedia. Most people, most normies click on it. Howdy, Andy. Good to see you. Good to see you from Tennessee land. Hello, hello. Maurizio. Buonasera. Basically North Portland. Ah, there you go. Howdy, Russ. Russ says, thanks for clearing that up, Frankie. The Couve. I've also had it I've heard it referred as Hongcouver, as in Hong Kong, Hongcouver. You know. Well, it's just because of the large Asian population. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, see what the Wikipedia says here. This is where I say if you're gonna take a shot, to brace yourself, a shot of whiskey or something, do it now. Sit down and strap yourself in, because this is the most ridiculous thing I've heard in a long time. Anyway, so the Great Vancouver Fire destroyed most of the newly incorporated city of Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, on June 13th, 1886. It started as 2 land clearing fires to the west of the city. The first fire was further away from the city and was clearing land for the roundhouse of the terminus of the Canadian Pacific Railway. Yeah, the terminus for the Canadian Transcontinental Railroad. The end of the lines, Vancouver, the city of Vancouver, British Columbia, because it's a port city. That's right there, right? So we're building the roundhouse there. Seen that on the channel many times if you're not aware of. Showed many photographs and old vintage footage videos of the railroad roundhouse, and it is like it sounds. It's a round building. And sometimes there's a turntable. They put the locomotive steam engine on it. They rotate the turntable, and then it can go into whatever open space is available in the garage, that is the roundhouse, you know, for maintenance, storage, whatever the case may be, right? So they were clearing something that's flammable. So I guess clearing wooded areas, forested area, tree stumps. I don't know. They just say they were setting fires to clear the land so that they could build a roundhouse for the railroad. All right. The second fire was clearing land to extend the city to the west. But I thought it had just been incorporated as a city, like just prior to the fire. And they're already, well, we better expand, even though we've just been incorporated. We only just done got here. The railroad's not even done yet. Anyway, there you go. Cousin Vinny says Vancouver, Washington had a great fire in 1889. Yeah, so only 3 years later. It's an oblate spheroid built house. Oblate spheroid house. Anyways, the fires spread northeast into the city, deleting, sorry, got to watch my language here with the Hutus in Canada, because we're the true north, strong and free up here, but we can't speak freely. Anyway, at least 21 people were deleted and destroying 600 to 1,000 buildings. It's quite the swing. That's a 400 building swing. They even put in brackets here, the exact numbers are unknown. Well, then why are you just throwing random numbers out there? How much would we say? I don't know, 500? Doesn't sound like enough. It is the great fire of the city's history now. I don't know, 1,200? That's too much. Like, we're just starting out here now. What do you want? That's 600 to 1,000. Sure, okay, that works. That works. And then we'll just put in there as a caveat, well, we don't even really know. We're just giving you some numbers. Anyways, most residents escaped by fleeing to the Burrard Inlet shore or the False Creek shore. So fled to the shoreline to be closer to the water in case they even got to go right into the water. It's not the first time we've heard that in Great City Fire stories in the official His story of different places. People, had to escape and go into the river or whatever. Anyways, following the recovery efforts, the city of Vancouver continued to grow. The city's first police force was set up, its first brick buildings were built, and its first fire engine was brought in from the nearby larger town of New Westminster, which since then has been swallowed up, I think, by Vancouver, or surrounded by. Not annexed, though, I don't think, but well, geez, yeah, it's the first fire engine was brought in after the fire, eh? Beauty. Way to go there, you bunch of knuckleheads. Early Vancouver. All right, let's look at the history of Vancouver here. European settlement in the Vancouver area began in 1862 after Captain George Henry Richards' 1859 discovery of coal in the Burrard Inlet. Absolutely false. There were colonies and small settlements and even little towns all up and down the west coast of Canada land, going back to the 15 and 1600s. I've shown that many times on the channel, and it's in my documentary film that's coming up here soon, Reset 1700, where pre-1700 maps show full coastlines of North America. They don't have the parts blank that say, parts unknown. It's all filled in, showing coastlines, river inlets or rivers that dump into the Pacific, towns and settlements with names all up and down on this map. But fine, you tell us 1862. Sure, whatever you say. Anyways, the settlement of Granville, or later Vancouver, was formed in the mid-1860s between two Burrard Inlet sawmills. So these sawmills just popped up on the middle of this inlet, and a town sprung up around it. Sure, okay. Why were the sawmills there in the first place? Well, because there was a wooded area, okay. You see how you just got to read carefully, because it's, well, it is what it is, but it's full on
Shenanigans.
I mean, call it what it is. Anyways, it began as shops and hotels providing service to the workers of the mills and later their families. Why wouldn't they just have a lumber camp or a mill camp? You know what I mean? The two sawmills were Moodyville, originally Moody's Mill. Oh, how creative. Opened in 1863 on the Burrard Inlet North Shore, and Hastings Mill, originally Stamps Mill, opened in 1867. Oh, the year Canada became Canada, 1867, on the inlet's south shore. So you had one on either side of the shore of the inlet, and then the town sprung up in between them, eh? Sure, okay. Hello, Martain. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Martain. Targeted arson in every large initial city. Ruins me there. Yeah, yeah. There's I mean, I don't doubt that there was a fire. I'm sure there was a Great Vancouver Fire in 1886. I just don't believe the story around it. I believe that the fire, whether it was an accident or purposely set or a combination of both, it probably was purposely set, was used by the controllers, if you will, for lack of a better term, as an excuse to rewrite the official narrative surrounding Vancouver. And then they can use that to explain away, the sudden appearance of all of these large structures that are built in record time. Makes it easier for them to, monkey around with the official documents and therefore the official written history. So the two mills were the main employers in Granville. In the early 1880s, they employed between 150 and 200 workers, not including loggers and longshoremen. The exact numbers are unknown, as many of the workers were transient, unmarried men. But again, it was between 150 and 200, but we don't know. Just like how many buildings burnt down? 600 to 1,000, but we really don't know. We're just putting those numbers out there to satiate your curiosity. So they only worked at the mill for a few weeks at a time before moving on. Why would they move on? There's nothing out here. Railroad's not even out here yet. Where would they move on to? Anyway, to reach Granville required either a 9-mile journey through dense forest from the nearby larger town of New Westminster, or a 30-mile journey via the Fraser River from Fort Langley, the capital of British Columbia at the time. In 1885, it was announced Granville would be the West Coast terminus of Canadian Pacific Railway. Don't forget, Granville then changes its name to Vancouver. So it was incorporated as the city of Vancouver April 6th, 1886. So a month and a week later is when they had their fire, June 13th, 1886. So they became the fourth city in British Columbia. Then they had their first mayor in May. Let's skip past it. Okay, so prior to the fire, Vancouver had experienced 3 weeks of abnormal heat for late spring. Sunday, June 13th was particularly hot with an offshore breeze from the Pacific Ocean. There's almost always, if anybody's lived on the coast, whether it's the Pacific coast, the Atlantic coast, the Arctic freaking coast, I don't care. Generally speaking, the breeze is coming from the coast, because there's nothing obscuring the ocean breezes like mountains and forests. Whereas on land, the wind can change direction for a number of reasons, including geographical obstacles like mountain ranges. Anyways, there was also apparently significant forced deadfall in the area to the east of the city, as well as debris from the recent clearing for the expansion of the city, which provided fuel for the fire. Wait, I thought they were controlled burning that to clear it away. So the first clearing fire was located to the southwest of the city. Land was being cleared to create the roundhouse. Yeah, for the yada yada. Okay. Dry conditions and a Pacific breeze caused fire to grow out of the workers' control throughout the morning and into the afternoon. Meanwhile, the second fire clearing or the second clearing fire, excuse me, was located at the west end of the city near the intersection of what is now Cambie and Cordova Street. The fire was being used to clear land for the expansion of the city, even though they had only just become a city a month and a week earlier. And they said there was what, 150 to 200 people? Let's say you triple that because of women and children's. Let's say 600 people. It's growing that fast, is it? Anyways, spreading of the fire here. The men working on the clearing fires and volunteers from the town attempted to put out both fires with buckets, wet blankets, and shovels. For the first clearing fire, the water came from Falls Creek, whilst the second fire used the hand pump well at the newly constructed nearby Regina Hotel. Small town already had a hotel, sure. The men attempted to bring both fires under control into the afternoon. However, the breeze turned to a gale. Also, not only was it a breeze blowing in and stoking the fires, but now that breeze is now turned into a gale, which I guess is a strong wind, gale force winds, right? And the men at the first fire were forced to give up their efforts and flee to Falls Creek shore. At the second fire, an attempt to create a fire break with pickaxes was unsuccessful. The second fire was abandoned when the two fire fronts joined. Yeah, so then we have the two smaller fires joining to make it one big super fire, stoked by the offshore winds, the breeze, excuse me. It jumps from a breeze to a gale. We skip the wind. There's no wind. It goes from breeze to gale. No matter all the steps to get in between, no. It goes from breeze to gale, fanning those flames, stoking those fires till they become a super fire. The smoke from the fire filled the sky over the town. The men fleeing warned the people in the town of the incoming fire. Why did they have to warn them of the fire when the fire filled the sky already over the town? I mean, if I'm sitting on my front porch in the afternoon on June 13th, 1886, and all of a sudden I see the sky fill with fire and smoke, I don't need my neighbor running up to tell me, hey, man, there's fire. I'm going to be like, you know what? No shit, Sherlock. Thanks for the heads up. Howdy, Ryan. Unindoctrinated in the box. Oh, no, not another fire, right? I know, shocking. That is true, Martin. That is true. Fire on wind is insanely fast because huge fires create their own wind, right? Pacific Northwest, uncovered in the box. Yeah, you're going to be familiar with this area. Anyways, most residents hurriedly packed up their belongings and their stores and headed to the Burrard Inlet shore. However, despite warnings from other residents and the growing smoke, a number of residents did not believe the fire was dangerous. Some residents waited until the last, the last minute to flee, whilst others headed to hotels to drink the unguarded liquor. Typical Canadian, there's unguarded booze there, bud. Let's get in there, get some giggle water, and have a good time while the town burns down. Shouldn't you perhaps be helping to put out the fire? You chuckle fucks, considering you do not have a fire department yet, according to the earlier on in this very article. Anyways, the Squamish people, those indigenous Native Americans, Native Canadian Indians here, Squamish people from the South Shore village Snock. I don't know. I don't speak Squamish. I'm sorry. I'm going to just phonetically say it's called Snock. Paddled across in canoes to view the fire. Yeah, they were just like, we're getting out of here, man. We got our canoes here, bud. We're good. See ya. At the Burrard Inlet shore, some residents were able to flee out into the inlet on floats and vessels. At least 200 people found refuge on Robert Kerr, the ship that saved Vancouver, a 58-meter or 190-foot wooden ship at anchor close to the Burrard Inlet shore at the time. The local Squamish Nation provided help to the survivors who were floundering in the water. They paddled over and canoed people to safety. The men of Vancouver Volunteer Hose Company Number 1 went to Scullard's General Store to remove supply of explosives, which were taken to the Hastings Mill at the opposite end of town. City Clerk Thomas McGueen saved the city records detailing the city's short history by entrusting them to a stranger. Hey, Bod, grab these really important papers. They're important enough for me to save, but not important enough for me to go and find somebody that I know and trust that I can give these papers to so they can, be under their guard and stewardship. This is just, I don't even know.
I don't believe you.
Anyway, after the fire passed, the newly elected mayor sent telegrams to the Canadian Prime Minister and the mayor of Toronto. Toronto's on the other end. That's 2/3 of the way across the country, you bozo. What's Toronto going to do? They can't send you stuff by railroad. Your railroad ain't done yet. It just said it in the article. They're going to send it by steamship all the way down and then through the canal and then up. It'd take, 2 weeks? Anyway, the telegram to the Prime Minister, Sir John A. Macdonald, read, "Our city is ashes. 3,000 people are homeless. Can you send us any government aid?" Telegrams were sent via horse to the nearby town of New Westminster. Shortly after, word arrived that relief supplies from New Westminster were being sent in wagons. This time, most Vancouver residents had gathered at Hastings Mill or False Creek. Hopefully not. That's not the mill that had the explosives. That would be a bad place to hang out during a fire. Anyways, the mayor instructed the survivors to gather at Westminster Bridge to await the relief supplies. An impromptu bivouac was set up with tents and lean-tos made with large branches. So everybody just made their own rough lean-tos like they're on Naked and Afraid or Survivor. Is that what we're doing now? We're playing Boy Scout out here? Where are the Royal Canadian Mounted Police at this time? Where are the Mounties to help? You know what I mean? It's part of what their job was back in the day. Anyways, at around midnight, supplies arrived from New Westminster and Port Moody, an eastern township on the Burrard Inlet. All right, so between 600 and 1,000 buildings were damaged or destroyed by the fire. Destroyed by the fire under the subheading of damage, with a few surviving the blaze. The Regina Hotel at the north of the city survived, as did the Bridge Hotel at the southeast. So why is everybody staying in lean-tos made out of sticks on the bridge then? A side building of the Bridge Hotel was used as a makeshift morgue. Oh, terrific. Let's put a morgue right next to a hotel. According to the alderman of Vancouver businessmen who witnessed the fire and the aftermath, there were 21 souls or parts thereof, yikes, found immediately after the fire, while others were discovered during the cleanup and rebuilding. The exact number of deceased is unknown. Mostly because Vancouver's population at this time was constantly changing due to, the transient mill workers, sure. Skip over some of the stuff. Again, link below. You feel free to look a little more into it if you like, but I'm going to jump ahead to the rebuilding here. Day after the fire, the manager of the Hastings Mill, Richard Alexander, announced free lumber for anyone rebuilding their homes and businesses after the fire. So if you didn't learn your lesson the first time about making your buildings out of wood and then burning down, come and get you some more wood. It's free. And no wonder it's free. People don't want to use it to, I don't want to build another matchstick home, please, and thank you. Floppy choppers in the box. He says the Masons probably had a common playbook they all went by, making all the stories similar. Well, I have a theory that the Freemasons of old, the Victorian era and so on, right up to about WW1, right? They were the guys that would go in and basically evaluate the structures after an area had been obliterated by some kind of catastrophe. They were the sort of some of the earliest, after the initial surveyors go in there and check stuff out. Then the Masons, the Masons of old, which aren't like today's Masons. Today's Masons is just a fraternity club for men that like to hang out and get drunk and do goofy things. It's not like they were back then. Back then, I think they would go in and they would evaluate building by building what could be saved and what couldn't. What couldn't be saved would be demolished, and stuff from that would be put in towards the buildings that could be saved, stuff dug out, repaired from mud floods, fires, whatever the case may be. Hodgepodge together as best as they could. Then some of the other authorities would come in and they would claim ownership or titleship of these buildings by building up a false narrative of how they were constructed, renovated, or renovated, that sort of thing. Land developers and, robber barons and so on. And then the railroad gets involved by bringing in workers from everywhere, right? People to populate the towns. Now, if it's a railroad town, well, job's done. But if it's a town that doesn't have the railroad running through it, but is connected in some other way, a stagecoach trail or something like that, then it takes a lot longer because they got to bring people into the nearest town by railroad and then bring them in by horse and buggy and carts, and stagecoaches, and so on. But once you get the railroad going to a lot of the sort of the main areas, those are the first ones to be dusted off and get their new official his story. Get the orphan trains too, right? Because for some reason there's kids running all over the streets of cities in the East, New York, Philadelphia, Boston, Chicago, Detroit, in the 1880s for some reason, up until, the 1920s. So, they process all these kids. Sometimes they give them different names. They separate siblings a lot of the times. They put them on these orphan trains. Now that's when you get the odd fellows involved, right? Because they're there to help the orphan kids, kids kids weren't necessarily always put into orphanages or were orphaned and left out in the streets just because both parents passed away in some terrible accident. A lot of times become ward of the states and they're placed in orphanages because, the parents are boozers or, a bazillion different reasons. You can find online, it's a list as long as my right arm of reasons why you could be institutionalized during the Victorian era. You're not religious enough, in the nut house you go. Too religious, in the nut house you go. I mean, that's just one example. So yes, it is it is sort of cells of semi-independently working groups of minions that have specific tasks. And once one task is complete, the next group of minions comes in, performs their task, and it's almost like a reverse assembly line. And I mean, there's exceptions to every rule, and I'm sure there was bumps in the road with a lot of these different things. Of course, not everything spilled out all at once and at the same time. Again, smaller, more removed, smaller urban centers or little towns, they may not have gotten in there and started rewriting the narrative until the 30s or 40s, maybe even after WW2. But the larger areas or the more important areas, like the terminus of a transcontinental railroad, a city that's going to be the terminus for that's pretty significant. So if you want to reset the narrative on some place like that, you're going to do it on one big brouhaha, like a fire, right? You're not just going to take advantage of necessarily a natural disaster, like let's say a naturally occurring flood, like some, Ohio River or Mississippi River flood. That then the powers who should not be are just being opportunists, and they're jumping on a natural disaster. They're jumping on that as an opportunity to leapfrog themselves into action. to roll out their agenda for resetting that area. Anyway, I went off on a tangent here. So, well, yeah, they get to filter everything. They get to filter society and the narrative around how the society got to be the way it was, for the history of the town or the city or the region. And don't forget people that had already been living there for generations, the indigenous peoples, like the Salish First Nations, for example, right? Their narratives and stories have been bamboozled too. So everybody gets free lumber because everybody's wooden buildings burnt down. So you want to rebuild? Here's some free wood. It's really combustible, but if you didn't learn your lesson, go for it, bud. Impromptu emergency shelters were set up in the new surviving structures. Several blocks of ice found beneath the wreckage of the Dayton House ice shed provided drinking water to residents. Why would you need to melt ice found in an ice shed from some ice company for drinking water when you're on an inlet? Yeah, it's salt water, but I mean, there had to have been another method of drinking water for this town to spring up. Don't you have city wells? They do. They mentioned pumping water from some hotel or something. Why do you need to melt ice? I don't know. I'm getting hung up on small, stupid stuff, I guess. Let me just read that again. Several blocks of ice found beneath the wreckage of the Dayton House ice shed provided drinking water to residents. Yeah, okay. City Council set up a temporary tent. Excuse me, City Hall. I'm getting so bamboozled by this narrative, I'm losing my voice here. A few months later, one of the first brick buildings in Vancouver became the City Hall building. Oh, in just a few months, they whacked up a brick building big enough to be their City Hall, eh? Of course they did. The day after the fire, to address looting, the mayor appointed 3 special constables, yada, and this guy, and so on and so on. They became the first Vancouver police force. And they operated out of the City Hall tent whilst Vancouver was rebuilt. They love using whilst in this article, which they are using it properly, I guess. In the days that followed, the residents of Vancouver set up white canvas tents and small huts, even though there's tons of hotels that didn't burn down, and searched the wreckage of their homes and businesses looking for any surviving objects. The Canadian Pacific Railroad Hotel was the first building to be completely rebuilt. Of course it was. Of course, the railroad gets their building built first. Within 2 weeks, Cordova Street from Carroll to Abbott Streets was filled with businesses reopening in basic structures. City Council organized the main streets to be planked, in other words, put in wooden sidewalks. Within 6 months, 500 buildings had been rebuilt, with many of the new buildings being made from brick. Let me say that again. Within 6 months, 500 buildings, many of them brick, were just whacked up out of nowhere. Well, jumpin' Jehoshaphat.
That doesn't make sense.
After the fire, the City Council focused on urban development to promote the growth of the city. Well, every time we grow the city, we accidentally burn it down, but hey, come on, we're growing. The Canadian Pacific Railway played an important role in the growth of Vancouver. Well, they should. They're partly responsible for the burning of it in the first place with their roundhouse land clearing. It brought demographic and economic growth and was the first largest property owner. Yes, that's the case in every major city in Canada that's on the Transcontinental Railroad line and for miles on either side. They own all the land. That was part of the deal they got from the Crown to build the railroad. It's crazy. So in the years following the fire, the population of Vancouver continued to grow, expanding from several hundred people to 2,000 within a year and 13,000 people within 6 years. Hey, come to our city that just burnt down. And everybody said, okie dokie. And they said, yeah, but you got to build it out of wood. but it's free wood. But don't worry, we're fixing to whack up about 500 buildings that made out of brick here in 6 months. So don't you worry there, bud. I mean, I don't know what else to say.
Horse shit!
Yeah, that sums it up. That sums it up, I think. What do you guys think? Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, Martine says, yeah, the banks always survive every disaster. For sure they do. The banks do. Apparently the newspaper did. Oh, and of course the railroad did. Just absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. Yeah. Good to see you, by the way. Red brick in the box. BS. Yeah, absolutely. Absolute BS. Cousin Vinny's just laughing his ass off in the chat. You got to laugh to keep from crying, because it almost makes me feel sad that they think we're this stupid. Anyways, I have another article here. Let's just compare and contrast the idiocracy surrounding this story here, shall we? Again, links below for everything. We looked at Wikipedia. This is BC, an untold history.knowledge.ca. Again, link for that one as well. This is actually an interesting site that I found. It's broken down into decades. You know, we're in the 1880s here. So they've got the date of 1886 for the Great Vancouver Fire. And again, this is British Columbia and Untold History.ca, and it's knowledge, their knowledge folder. Some nice photos in here, some of which I've plucked that we can have a look at after in the second half of the show here. But I want to read some of the text here, and let's just see if things gel and jive a little bit here. You know, just for shits and giggles, as my granddaddy used to say. On the morning of Sunday, June 13th, 1886, the city of Vancouver was only 2 months old. The fledgling settlement comprised no more than 1,000 buildings. So that means that in the Wikipedia article, 600 to 1,000 buildings burnt down. So according to this, that means all of them potentially burnt down. Every last stick of every last building burnt down to a cinder. Anyways, on a small pocket of land along the Burrard Inlet, now Gastown, and the downtown east side. By that afternoon, only about 36 buildings stood. The rest had burnt to a crisp in under an hour. Well, so far, so good-ish. They kind of match up. The blaze started midday when fires burning mill waste spread wildly out of control due to strong winds. According to the newspaper account, the men watching over the clearing fires could do nothing but flee for their lives. That's in quotes, by the way, flee for their lives. Minutes later, the whole city was awash in smoke, ash, and ember. Most of Vancouver's buildings had been built with freshly milled lumber that lit up like tinder. Yeah, no kidding. Residents had no time to pack up their lives before heading for safety. According to eyewitness accounts, flames engulfed Vancouver's wooden sidewalks faster than a man could run. That's dramatic. That's a quote, by the way, too. So somebody supposedly actually said that. The stories that survived that day present a mix of tragedy, compassion, and a headstrong determination to trudge on. Oh, yes, much like the Brits, us Canadians, right? Don't panic and, keep a stiff upper lip and, yeah, all that crap. Sure. So here they're saying that fires were burning mill waste. So I'm to assume fires, plural, meaning both fires were used to burn mill waste, while in the previous article it was one fire was used to be for expanding the town, and the other one was out by the mill. I don't remember them saying anything about mill waste, but that's fine. Strong winds. No, it went from a breeze to a gale. Quit lying. Then the men watching over the clearing fires could do nothing but flee for their lives. No, they tried to put out the fires. They didn't just do nothing and fled. No, according to the previous article, they tried to put out the fires and create fire breaks. So, and then it says people had no time to pack up their lives before heading for safety. But in the previous article, people were warned so they could pack up their stores and their belongings before heading down to the shore. So which one is it? Both can't be simultaneously true here.
Liar!
As the fire raged across town, choking its residents in smoke, many leapt into the Burrard Inlet. Okay, there you go, to escape the flames. One woman waded above the waves holding her sewing machine. There's always stories like this. The only item she had managed to save. Others clambered onto boats and makeshift rafts on the steamers and wharfs, while the city was a mass of roaring flame. Were fathered hundreds of frightened and exciting men and sobbing women and children. Reported the Vancouver Daily News a day later. After the vessels had filled up, others could only tread water. Some never made it to the shore at all. A couple of businessmen survived only by burrowing their faces into the gravel. What? A mother and son were found deleted at the bottom of a well. No mention of the Salish peoples, or the Squamish, I mean. Oh no, here we go. All right. Agnes Lackett Joe watched the flames lick the sky from across the water on the north shore. Then the Squamish women hopped in a long dugout canoe and hurried paddled across the inlet to rescue those who had jumped in the harbor. Okay, there we go. Fellow Squamish followed her behind her. Now toward the shore, they sang a song. Canoes were full. They brought survivors back to the village and returned for more. The Squamish Community Act of Harem, went mostly unacknowledged for more than 100 years. Of course. Oh, thanks for rescuing us from our great fire. How can we repay you? How about we force you onto reservations? Does that sound good? No? That's too bad. Do it anyway. The exact number of people who died that day remains unknown. Though dozens are believed to have perished, most lost their home on the day of fire. He sent a telegram to Ottawa, where ashes, yada, yada. Money from the federal government did come, along with aid and supplies from the provincial government and a host of towns near and far, including Toronto and Seattle. The effort to rebuild Vancouver started mere hours after the city burned down. By morning, the skeletons of new buildings already stood amid emergency tents and lingering smoke. So just starting to whack up buildings even whilst there's still the smoky wreckage of the former city. Weeks later, the city looked much like it had before the fire. Oh, sure. Up to 1,000 buildings in weeks. Though with considerable more brick framed buildings. As Vancouver historian Chuck Davis put it, in 20 minutes, Vancouver had been wiped off the earth. In 12 hours, it was rising again. Really?
I think I can smell shite. Yes, I can definitely smell shite.
Burning shite, to be exact. I don't know. What do you think about that there, people in the chat, in the box? What do you think of that? Yeah, drama. It sounds like if you made a movie of this story but didn't tell anybody it was based on a true story, people walk out of the theater going, that was the most cockamamie thing I've ever heard of in my life. There's no way that happened. People can't do that. You can't rebuild your city while the embers of your former city that burnt down are still spewing smoke and flame. Yeah, I don't get the buried their faces in gravel thing. I do not get it. It's like some weird random sentence was just thrown in the middle of that paragraph. I have no idea, Kathy. I really don't. That's a good point. Channel 53 says now more people will have perished because everyone would be filming it or streaming it. Yeah. Back then, at least if you perished in some kind of town or city disaster, it was because I'm going to protect my home. This is my land, or my great-great-granddaddy, pioneered this here land and we've been farming it ever since. And I'd be danged if I'm going to leave it. As soon as I walk off this land, somebody's going to come in here and loot and take all my stuff, and yada, yada. You know what I'm saying? Which is, a valid thing to do. Now, that's much more understandable than standing there filming it when you're clearly in peril. Yeah. I didn't even see the fire because I was too busy filming the fire. Ridiculous. Anyways, got one more article here to look at real quick, then we'll take a mid-show break. This is from gastown.org, remembering the Great Vancouver Fire. Again, link below for this as well. The Great Fire of 1886. This is from a book. The Great Vancouver Fire book. Vancouver, a city about 1,000 wooden buildings, was destroyed in less than 45 minutes. Here we go. Some say as little as 20 minutes. So was it 45 minutes or 20 minutes? Something like that. Sure, 20 minutes. Let's go with 20 minutes. It makes for a better story, right? It makes for a taller tale. You know what I mean? It makes for a good drama. Details vary in the accounts of eyewitnesses, but all agree it happened with stunning suddenness. Quote, Vancouver didn't burn, said one eyewitness. It exploded, unquote. It was June 13th, 1886, a Sunday. A small crew of Canadian Pacific Railway men working tirelessly clearing fires set the day before. What? With little warning, a sudden wind hit hard, and the fire got away from the men. Death toll was uncertain. Figure as high as 28 had been cited, but an informal inquest held that the next day noted that only 8 confirmed. Many deceased could have been burned without a trace. The nature of the town was that there were many transit. Yeah, there it is. Transit workers. Someone who saw the ominous rising clouds of smoke began furiously ringing the bell of St. James's Church at Powell and Westminster Road. First time hearing that there, people. What is now Main Street. For many, it was the first sign of fire. I thought guys came running into town to tell people about the fire because they didn't believe there was a fire, even though the sky was filled with fire. Now they're ringing church bells. All right, sure. For many, that was the first sign of fire. Then came the alarmed shouts of men running ahead of the flames to escape and warn the town. There it is. So here's the we set the fire. The fire got away from us because a breeze turned into a gale. 2 fires joined and became a super fire. So then we rang the bell. Then we ran into town and told people. Okay. And how many buildings were destroyed? Between 600 and 1,000. And how many people perished? Between 8 and 28. Do you have any kind of accuracy at all? Somebody apparently has saved the city's historical documents, so it should be all buttoned up. Oh no, because he entrusted those documents to a stranger, and the article didn't finish what happened to that guy. So it's a loose string left hanging like a terribly written movie plot. Anyways, for many, that was the first sign of the fire. Then the guys came running out. The fire overtook them, leaping from treetop to treetop, and ascended with a roar on the defenseless little town. It sounded like a Disney movie or something. Tommy Rogers is in the box. Good day, good day. Good to see you, Tommy. Hello. The southeast corner of Cordova and Carroll the morning after the fire. Regina Hotel at Canby and Water is in the distance. Smaller white tent in the other is where the Woodwards is today. Men dropped before their companions' eyes and were consumed in the fire. He was so ferocious, the bell of St. James Church, which had warned so many, turned to molten slag when the church, in its turn, burst into flames. The melted bell can be seen today at the Vancouver Museum. Really? A bunch of burning wooden buildings got hot enough to melt a metal church bell, did it? Okay, sure. The ship of Robert Kerr was blown from its moorings and came to at the foot of Dunleavy Street, where it served as a refuge for people jumping into the inlet to escape the fury of the fire. 3 weeks after the fire, help from the surrounding towns proved swift and generous. Doctors and women collected medical supplies, bandages, food, clothing, household goods were donated. By 6 o'clock in the evening, an unending relief caravan was making its way to Vancouver. 5 weeks after the fire, by 3 o'clock in the morning, lumber wagons were jolting in from Fraser communities. Nails and tools were unloaded. I thought that one lumber mill was just giving away free wood, so why did they have to bring in free wood? Yeah, okay, anyway. 20 minutes, Vancouver wiped the air, and 12, it was rising again. Yeah, sure. So there's their improvised city hall, a tent. Meanwhile, there's a bunch of buildings still here, but we're going to put our city hall in a tent because it's great for a photo op. Group of men in front of the Tremont Hotel. This is a hotel. So the hotel guys can get their act together enough to build a wooden structure, but the city councilors, I guess they don't know how to swing a hammer. Absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, link below for that short but sweet article that almost, after the second or third sentence, completely veers off from what we read in the previous article. The previous 2 articles. Nothing lines up. It's absolutely ridiculous. That's an excellent question, Ross. Ross of Water the Tree. Are they joking? Yeah, I think they are. Or they're trying to. No, they can't even keep the lies straight. Well, the guy that they entrusted with the important city papers was a stranger, you see, so who knows what he did with them. Oh, nothing about any of the horses, cattle, sheep, goats, chickens, ducks, geese, rabbits, or any other farmyard animals. Not to mention household pets. No, nothing, not a word. Not a word. Not a word about any school that burnt down and had to be rebuilt. Nothing. Just a church bell melting and somewhere between 600 to 1,000 buildings burning down. But don't worry, I'll give you some free wood to build a new flammable house. Wow. Anyway, getting ready to take a mid-show break here real quickly. I have got a 6-minute video for this one. This is a nice one. This is footage of Vancouver, the city of Vancouver, British Columbia, from just, I want you to keep in mind as you're watching this video, from just 21 years after the fire of 1886. This footage is from 1907. Somebody mounted a film camera on the front of a trolley, a tram. We've seen it before. And, they just film as they're going up and down the streets, right? This is from 1907. It's just over 6 minutes long. It's a good one. So smoke them if you got them. Put your cans on, your ear goggles. Turn her up to 11, bud. And we shall see you on the other side. 6 minutes and 20 seconds. Again, Vancouver, 1907. 21 years after the fire that decimated the entire city. All right? We'll see you back here. Cheers.
The town at 10-pound alley is the roughest place in town. They start cutting and shooting Soon as the sun goes down, oh, tell me, what kind of place can the alley be? Every woman I get, Lord, the alley takes away from me. I heard a pistol shoot, somebody groan. They're killing some poor crap shooter 'cause it wouldn't shake, rattle and roll. Whoa, tell me, what kind of place can the alley be? For every woman I get, Lord, the alley takes away from me. Look for my baby, and she can't be found. I saw her early this morning. My baby was 10 pounds bound. Whoa, tell me, what kind of place can the alley be? Every woman I get, yeah, Lord, the alley, I said that nasty alley. Lord, I said the alley, oh, well, it takes away from me.
All right, and we are back. Welcome back, everyone. Frankie here, New West Reset. Thank you very much for shooting in and joining me here for another live stream, New West Reset Live, episode 183 here today. We're looking at the Great Vancouver Fire of 1886. A lot of questions in the chat about that video we watched during the break. Again, that was from 1907, Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, 21 years after, apparently, in 1886, the entire city burnt to the ground in their Great Fire. All right, let me scroll up. I'm going to answer some of the questions in the chat here. Now, you can find that footage on YouTube, and it's occasionally mislabeled as Victoria, Vancouver, 1907. It's not Victoria. Victoria is on Vancouver Island. That footage is from Vancouver, British Columbia. So again, there's that confusion, Vancouver Island, the city of Vancouver, British Columbia, and then there's Vancouver, Washington. So I did take the original raw footage. There's actually two separate reels that I spliced together. I did run it through some filters to try to adjust the contrast because the original film is quite crappy and hard to see what's going on. So I did lighten it up a little bit and mess around with the contrast. Now the streets were not snow. Okay, those were paved streets or dirt streets, depending on what street we were on. It's just when I jacked up the contrast a little bit, it looks like it's snow on the ground, but no, they're not. I know you're down in the US there, Chassis, but it's Canada. Canada doesn't have snow all the time. In fact, Vancouver rarely gets snow. And if they do, it's not much, and it tends not to accumulate for very long. It basically comes down as snow and ends up like rain, if they get any snow at all. It's pretty few and far between. So yeah, no, that was not snow. It's just because I bumped up the lighting and the contrast a little bit. The ground looked a bit like snow. And where's all the horse poop? Well, those were those dark splotches and piles that you saw piled up in the streets. And what you would do is most cities or towns would actually clean up the horse poop. The horse poop, from what I understand, and this could all be, I'm gonna use a perfect pun here.
Horse shit!
So it could all be horse shit, but from what I understand, excrement would be collected and used, the manure, right, for city parks and so on. Now you have to remember that in the Victorian era, the Edwardian era, I would say again, easily up till WW2 even, a lot of larger cities had tons of green space, what today we call green space or park space. But back then it was probably tenfold to what we have now. Even if you live in a city that has a lot of natural green spaces or park areas, it would have been 10 times that in the old world. And there wouldn't have just been trees and flowers for the sake of trees and flowers. The trees would have been fruit trees that would bear fruit for that region or that area. Vancouver's great. They could grow almost anything in Vancouver. Pears, peaches, apricots, apples, some citrus, and then berries out the wazoo. So people would collect the horse poop. We call them road apples up in these here parts too there, eh, buddy? We call them road apples. And yes, as you notice, on almost every corner, there's castle-like looking buildings. That's a good point, Ubukan. In the chat says, I would think the ladies wouldn't want the hem of their outfits brushing the ground. Yeah, everybody's wearing really long skirts or dresses that drag on the dusty, muddy, dirty ground or the plank sidewalks. Yeah, Well, if you like that kind of stuff, Martin, where you're watching people precariously dodging in and out of traffic like a bunch of maniacs and people running in front of trolleys and horse-drawn carriages cutting off trolleys and trams, I have a series here on the channel that I do occasionally here on the live show on Sundays called Pedestrian Oblivion. And I've created a playlist of all the live shows I've done with Pedestrian Oblivion. You know, like London Pedestrian Oblivion, Canadian Pedestrian Oblivion. And it's footage like this. I slow it down and we watch it, and we just watch how people seem to be completely oblivious to the dangers of what they're doing. Running in front of trains, trolleys, people driving their horses and carts like, I don't know, like they're Stevie Wonder or Ray Charles, you know, they're blind as a bat. You know, I'm glad you liked the tune, Ryan. That was by Canadian blues legend Colin James, Mr. Colin James, who's still going strong, man. He's been doing it for like 30 years. Started in the 80s. So he's been doing it 40 years. Started off as a teenager, opening for another great Canadian blues legend. And you wouldn't think, you know, Canada, the blues, but yeah. And of course, that was a cover version of Tin Pan Alley, made famous by Stevie Ray Vaughan. Yeah, a lot of brake checking. Why would you brake check an electric trolley? I have no idea. You know. Odin's Raven says a few of those buildings, referring to ones in the video, that is, survived to be the modern zombie hangouts. Yes, especially when you get into the Hastings and East Hastings, the east side, just outside of Gastown, but probably Gastown too now. It's probably everywhere now, unfortunately. Yes, you get those poor souls that got hooked on that poison, that junk. Yep. It may, I'm sorry, yeah, it may seem very fake, again, because I did adjust the contrast a little bit to try to bump it up. Because, I mean, it's, you know, from 1907. You know, taking it at face value, that's some old ass film, you know. So it's been through the ringer. That is a good point. It's not so much an issue on the west coast of Canada, especially the southwest coast. You know, in and around, you know, the city of Vancouver itself, and in the entire Okanagan Valley. It doesn't really get very cold. They don't really get a winter per se. Their winters are basically rainy, like Seattle or Portland. I mean, Vancouver today, you drive from Vancouver to Seattle, it's an hour and a half. You're probably waiting at the border for 20 minutes of that time. If you could just shoot across real quick, it's probably an hour's drive, depending on traffic and whatnot, right? So the weather's the same. But yeah, once you get a little bit north in British Columbia, or you get to, you know, across on the other side of the Rockies, where those warm winds from the Pacific can't necessarily easily penetrate over the Rockies all the time. You get here to the prairies, yeah, you get a lot of cold winters, and yeah, you're not digging, you know, foundations and doing a lot of outside construction when it's minus 30 degrees Celsius, which is basically minus 30 Fahrenheit at that point. You know, and it's like that for 6 months out of the year. You know, that's a good point, Martin. Don't see any traffic cops on the corners. That probably explains why everybody and their dogs are zipping in front of traffic there. People on bicycles, a lot of people on bicycles back then. I mean, obviously cars weren't a thing yet, but I guess if you lived in the city, you can't have a horse, right? If you're renting an apartment in downtown Vancouver in 1907, 1905, 1910, you're not going to be keeping a horse and a wagon. Now, if you have a house, yeah, sure, you could have a carriage house, and maybe you keep a horse at some stable nearby or something. I don't know. So I guess you're riding a bike, or you're taking the trolley or the tram, right? There's no way this town burned to the ground and rebuilt in 10 years. Not, well, that was 21 years for that. But yeah. But I mean, according to some of the articles, within 6 months, they had 500 brick buildings, or 500 buildings put up, many of them brick. How did a hill burn down? Another good question. Another excellent question. Same ugly ass power lines we have today, a century later. Yeah, well, I think Vancouver got power in like the 18, probably 1890s-ish. Yeah, I would agree with that. Odin's Raven says the old part of Vancouver is totally mud flooded. Yeah. We got to think, right? And again, this is all of this Great Vancouver Fire, and me highlighting stuff like the mud flood, and me going on that little tangent about how towns or cities may have been reset, and some of them may have been you can't reset an entire country at the same time, even if there was one big event that happened at the same time, covering, let's say, the entire continent of North America, right? But you're not going to be able to reset the whole thing at the same time. You're going to have to work it in stages. So I cover a lot of that in my documentary film, Reset 1700. I put that up last year around this time. It was up for a little while, and then I got a strike. I got a copyright strike from YouTube, and they took it down. They didn't even give me a warning. They just took it down, and they gave me a strike. So I'm not too far away from completing a new version where I won't get that, and I'll be able to, fingers crossed, keep the thing up on the channel this time. So I'm just finishing some of the last touches on some of the final editing, because it takes a while. You do your audio recording, and then you got to do just a rough pass and take out all the, where you can hear me breathing or coughing or clearing my throat or whatever. And then you do another pass where you tighten up some of the sentences and the flow, and then you do a third pass and tighten stuff up more, and yada, yada, yada. You do about 5 passes just for the audio, right? Then I put together the whole video aspect of it, and then I got to sync those together and create breaks and so on. So I'm almost there. But I cover all of that, all of this sort of thing, and especially this area in that documentary, Reset 1700, because there was a major event in this area in the year 1700, January of 1700. And it effed up this whole area, the Pacific Northwest of the United States and the southwestern part of Canada here, for at least 1 million square miles, but probably more. So yeah, I would definitely say that flooded and then mud flooded. I think it was the event caused a tsunami and a tidal wave that flooded, but then there was other events. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag in case you haven't seen the documentary film yet, but there were other events that were triggered. And then this would have later on not only the receding of the ocean flood, but other events combined with that would have caused a mud flood. Sort of a nuclear winter followed by a thaw, followed by a mud flood. So that's exactly what I think happened in this entire region. If you have horse crap, you also have sparrows. I know there's certain kinds of insects that prefer dung. There were some carts that were selling produce, I believe, but then there was also some wooden, they almost look like wooden shacks that were not on the sidewalk, but were built on the side of the street, but just off of the side, so the trolleys and stuff could still get by. I think those were magazine and newspaper stands, I think. Yeah, well, the other thing that you may have noticed too is that at this time, Canada was still driving on the left-hand side of the street. It wasn't until, I believe, the late 20s, I can't remember if it was 26, 1927, 1928, 29, somewhere in there, we switched from driving on the left to driving on the right. So this film obviously is prior to that. So we're driving on the left like they do in the UK and other parts of the realm. So yeah, you're going to see horse poop, and what's going to happen is you're going to see random horse droppings here and there, but then you're going to see piles of it. And that's the maintenance guys piling up the manure. And then they come back later and they get rid of the entire pile. It's usually either a two-wheeled cart, actually, that they collect it with. It doesn't have to be a big four-wheeled cart. And then it's used to, to basically fertilize the soil in all the city parks that had all the fruit trees and that sort of thing. That's why that whole thing about, people had chamber pots in their bedrooms that they could pee in, and in the morning they threw it out their window. No, they didn't. No, they didn't. You would have gotten a fine. The Lord Council or the government or the state or wherever you lived, the town or the hamlet, they would have given you a fine or taxed you for that. Pee-pee and poo-poo was collected because it was useful, and it was useful for different things. Like, for example, urine was useful in tanneries for tanning leather, but it was also useful in laundry, believe it or not. Yes, clothing, because the ammonia in the urine could get whites really white. It was also used in dye making to dye fabrics. And again, the doo-doo was used as fertilizer. If you lived at home and you had your own garden, you're not going to throw your doo-doo out the window. You're going to use your doo-doo in your own garden. People did not throw their pee-pee and poo-poo out the windows. That's the stupidest wives' tale out of almost all the stupidest wives' tales. Anyway, thank you for being here. If you haven't already, please do all the things. If you're enjoying the show, hit the thumbs up and do all the other things down here to help a fella out. If you're watching this after the live, thank you very much for all of your support. Welcome to all my new friends, and thank you for being here to all my old friends here on the channel. Hope you're enjoying the show so far. As mentioned, got the documentary coming up quick, fast, and in a hurry here. So, click all the things that don't work so you don't get notified. And I'll give you a heads up when the documentary is up and ready to be broadcast. And I will broadcast it live here like I did last time. I'll have some giveaways. I'll give away some New West Reset swag and so on and so forth. Some drip, as the kids say. I don't know what that means, but that's what I heard a kid say once, and he seemed cool. So now I'm going to say it. Anyway, let me open up the file here. It's not a huge file. The first few photos are supposedly the immediate aftermath of the fire itself. And then I decided the remainder of the photos would be fires up to and including the year 1900. Which is really only 14 years after that fire. Now, again, I think the fire probably did happen, but I think the story around the fire has been falsified, and I think they used that falsification to help build an entire fake, false narrative about the official history of the city of Vancouver itself, and then for a lot of the buildings. I think a lot of the larger, older buildings were already there. They were there prior to the 1700 event. They were damaged, some of them destroyed during that 1700 event. And then the surveyors, and once word got out that things settled down, the surveyors and the Freemasons were sent in to evaluate things and decide what could stay and what had to go. And they went from there. Let me just pull this up. So the first one on the file here is, I'm sorry, it looks like it says Cordova Street, but I don't know what the side street is. So this main thoroughfare is Cordova Street. And again, this is immediately after the fire. Supposedly you can still see some smoke here in the background. So 1886, June 13th, maybe June 14th. 1886. Again, not sure entirely what street this would be. Looks like there's a lot of buildings still standing, right there. Considering it's, if you cross-reference narratives of two of those articles that we covered at the top half of the show, they said between 600 and 1,000 buildings were destroyed, and the other article said that Vancouver itself had about 1,000 buildings, which would mean then that just by their own crunching their own numbers that they provide to us, every building was destroyed. Meanwhile, here you've got wooden buildings and brick and stone buildings that are standing. So look at this crazy street that's made from wood. And then you've got a big section of muck, and then you've got a raised wooden side. Look, this is ridiculous. Oh, yieldy ladder lean. Perfect. That's how you know this photo is, everything that they're trying to tell us here is true. It's legit. So here's the hotel. Fremont Hotel. Guess a couple of bunk beds or some cots in here, and that's it. Maybe a tent in the back. Maybe that's the cheaper room back there. It's only a nickel, and these are a dime, maybe. I don't know. It's ridiculous, though. Of course, leave it to the hotel owners to just sit around and try to rake in some dough instead of helping to rebuild their supposedly completely destroyed city. Again, I'm not sure entirely what street this is. This might be their famous maple tree, which wasn't actually a maple tree, but that burnt down in the fire, I think, maybe. Oh, look, another ladder. Perfect. I think a lot of times, too, to help drive the narrative of the destruction, photographs are only taken from a certain perspective. So we're going to take this photograph standing here and show all this burnt stuff. We're going to show you all this namby-pamby crap going on here. But they're not going to show a lot of photographs that have these in. You notice this is kind of hidden here, and this is sort of the area of focus or framed within the photograph or the shot taken. They're really trying to show you this, and don't worry too much about these here, not to mention all the way down the street, right? So a lot of times these photos are taken from a certain perspective, I think, here. So you see here, oh, look at all this destruction. But meanwhile, in the background here, you've got all kinds of buildings along the shoreline here. So again, it's just, just peppering the what potentially could have been a real thing, I think. Yeah, there probably was a fire. These clowns did goof around. They could have said it on purpose. And, to destroy a lot of the city so that they could come in and reclaim stuff and say, oh, yeah, we rebuilt this. But even if it was an accidental spreading of a fire, either way, the result is the same. So again, we're seeing this is all taken immediately after the fire. So you can see there's not almost every building destroyed. There's tons of brick and stone buildings already standing. They make it sound like when you look at something like this, oh, it was completely wiped out, buddy. Well, except for this big, massive thing here in the background. And a big building up here on the hill. And you know what I mean? They take it from make sure you get these tents here in the foreground, right in the center of the frame. If you're lucky, you might get some of this. This is Front Street, 1886, immediately after the fire. So again, they already had brick and stone buildings prior to the fire that they did not allude to in any of those 3 articles that I referenced at the top half of the show. They made it sound like everything was made out of wood, and whoops, it all burnt down. We best not do that again. We best start framing our buildings in brick. Well, and by the way, a lot of good that does you, apparently, building a building out of stone and or brick, because this is that same fire, and these are destroyed. Well, they'll tell you, well, the flooring is wood, so once it burns, the building collapses in on itself. Yeah, sure. Then how come this is fallen away up here and so on, They did allude to dynamite in one article, and I know sometimes in cities They make fire breaks by dynamiting buildings down so that the flames can't jump from building to building. So in order to save buildings from being destroyed, we need to destroy these buildings. You see? You see what I'm saying?
That doesn't make sense.
Look at whatever this is. You can bet that they're going to reclaim this, and it's now, oh, that was the old post office, or that's our new city hall we built, or whatever. So it seems like when there's a great fire, it doesn't matter if your structures are made out of wood, brick, or stone. It's all coming down. Whether the fire was deliberately set for that purpose or was taken advantage of, it's all coming down. There's our old buddy Sig in the box. Good to see you. Hello, hello, howdy. Noah Montague is here as well. Spokane, Washington was on fire last week. Yeah, well, you guys, you're like Alberta and British Columbia and Ontario. You guys get a lot of fires there. That's a beautiful part of the realm. Is Washington State. I've been there many times. Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana. Beautiful down there. Mountains, wooded areas, lakes, rivers. Beautiful. And that's why they're burning it down, Noah. That's why they're burning it down. There's that tree. Carroll and Powell Street, 1886. So this is pre-fire. This is before the fire, because this is the tree that was just left in a burnt stump, supposedly. It could be. They're building a big one out here near where we grow all our corn. Of course. No, we don't need corn. Pesticide-free, MGO-free corn. No, we don't want that. Around Bow Island area here in southern Alberta. Yeah, they're putting in a big one down there. Yeah. Because who needs food when you can have a data center? You know? Judge, jury, and synthesizer in the box. Good to see you. Hello. Howdy. All right, so this is a year later now, 1887. The first Canadian Pacific train arriving in Vancouver, May of 1887. So 11 months after the fire. The fire that supposedly, one of the reasons that they say that fire was caused and got out of control is they were clearing land for this railroad's roundhouse, for their train garage, the train barns, where they store and do maintenance on the steam locomotives and the rail cars if need be. They can machine and fabricate different parts and stuff and so on and so forth. You know what I'm saying? So this is 11 months after the fire. Finally, the railroad arrives, the first train. Part of that fire was caused in anticipation of the train arriving, and it only arrives a year later. All right, so this is the year 1890 now. 4 years after the fire burned the city to the ground. So either some of these that will tell us were untouched, even though potentially 1,000 out of 1,000 buildings could have burnt down. So they were either untouched or they were built in that 6-month building boom. Or maybe they finished building this one the day before this photo was taken in 1890. I don't know, take your pick, because it's all just cockamamie. Here's part of a parade. I believe this was the Dominion Day parade, July 1st. Dominion Day is now Canada Day. We used to be known as the Dominion of the Confederation of Canada, part of the Commonwealth, you see. Because we were the Dominion of Canada of, the Crown. So Canada Day used to be called Dominion Day, but it was July 1st. So this might very well be. It says decorated Red Cross brewery carts. I didn't know the Red Cross had breweries. So it might not be the Red Cross. It might just be the name of the brewery, Red Cross Brewery. But they're in the parade. There's the old Canadian flag. It's the red ensign. Union Jack with a coat of arms here that you can't see on a red background. So in old photos of Canada, you'll either see this or you'll see the Union Jack. But these buildings look like they've been here a while. 1890. So 4 years after the fire. Yeah, it is the Dominion Day Parade, because here we are, 1890, July 1st, Cordova Street. So again, only 4 years after. What the size of these behemoths here? And super ornate, right? These aren't just whacked up. They got arches and columns and pillars and capitals and all this brickwork. Stack it a brick, Giuseppe, stack it a brick. Not to mention all the shenanigans up along here. Jesse Nix in the box says, my state uses tornado, flooding, or hurricanes to reset things. Yeah, see? Sometimes they use the tornado here in Alberta. Sometimes. Calgary, they could use the flood, and I'm sure they have, because we've had a number of bad floods here since like the 1870s. But we can also get the flip-flop. We can get the blizzard, the terrible blizzard that knocked the power out or whatever. We can get those too. Because you are in Mississippi, if I'm not mistaken, are you not, Jesse? Down in the great state of MISSI, Kathy Broughton says, tornadoes and floods here in Kentucky. Yeah. Because you have, what is that, the Ohio River in Kentucky? Or do you have both the Ohio and the Mississippi River in Kentucky? But yeah, tornadoes for sure. Floods for sure. Yeah. Near Tupelo. Ah, near Tupelo. Gotcha. Woods Raven says, somebody set a fire in the woods down the street from me last night. Very sus. Had a couple of small fires break out here in Alberta in the last few days, and one of them is suspicious as well. Always seems to be the case. Mainly Ohio River. Okay, yeah. Well, I know that was that. I did a live stream about that with, what was it? Cleveland? Yeah, Cleveland. But yeah, that flood of that same, I mean, I just focused in on Cleveland, but every city and town along the Ohio River there, that same year was brutal. It went like 38 feet above its normal average height or whatever of that river. It was crazy. Angel Dreams in the box. Good to see you. Hello, my friends. Long time no see. Sorry about that. Been missing Frankie and the gang live. Glad to be here. Glad to have you. No need to apologize. It's good to see you. Yeah, that's right. Well, have you noticed in the last few years, they've started referring to it as fire season or wildfire season or forest fire season. So yeah, fires now have become a season now. So we have 5 seasons now, everybody. We have spring, summer, fire, fall, winter. (1890), part of Vancouver, BC, seen from the Hotel Vancouver. Looks pretty good shape and pretty built out for 4 years after the fire. And this is the inlet that everybody had to take refuge in or around because all of this supposedly was burning. A couple of churches here, beautiful. So I guess this was just whacked up real quick. So was this, or is it maybe more like these were whacked up quick after the fire, and some of these more magnificent, substantial structures potentially were already here, maybe even here before the 1700 event. It's another shot from a little bit pulled back. They've even built a viaduct bridge here at this point. So that's some hefty infrastructure. Again, this is 1890. The fire was 1886. 1891, here's Labor Day Parade. Still seeing some wooden structures, although I guess these could have been built after the fact too. Maybe some of these were built from that free wood that one mill was given away. But, the rest, brick and stone as far as the eye can see 5 years after the fire. I guess these were some of the 500 buildings that went up in 6 months. Oh, sure, there it was. I called it. It became a courthouse, apparently. That building in that one 1886 immediate aftermath photo. It was either going to be a government building or a post office of some kind, but here it is, their courthouse, 1893. So 7 years. Already looks like it's been here for 107 years or more, but that's fine. Notice you got to go up all these steps to get into this, but then there's points of egress all down in here too, and under the stairs. Not to mention whatever that is in the background, probably customs house or something. I mean, it is a port city after all. This is labeled as Chinese Arch on CP Rail Dock at the foot of Howe Street, 1896. So now 10 years after the fire. There are these houses up on the hillside here built. You've got your Canadian Pacific Dock here at the end of Howe Street. Again, look how wide the street is. You can have all of this pomp and circumstance going on here. Apparently there's some Chinese delegate visiting in the 1890s in Vancouver for some reason. Like I said, one of its nicknames is Hong Coover, so I mean, I guess that explains it. The Badminton Hotel, 1898. Look at this beauty. The tech on it. Got enough towers on this thing there, bud? They got silly with the towers on this. 4's not enough. One in each corner? No. We'll put an extra one here in the middle, extra one here in the middle. Got a low level down here, but then the street kind of comes up, and then that low level all but disappears here. And now this is your main entrance. That's interesting. I wish these photo was taken, you know what I'm going to say. The photographer always stands where half of it's hidden. I think it's done on purpose. Angel Dream says there was a big earthquake here in Northern California recently. Yeah, those are scary. I've only experienced one when I was visiting California in the 80s, late 80s. But it wasn't bad. It was just kind of more of one of those tremor ones where, like the locals don't even notice. But me as a sheltered Canadian was just like, oh, we're all going to die. And everybody's looking at me like I lost the plot. You know what I'm saying? Mind you, I was there in December and January, and I was swimming on the beach at Oceanside, California on January 2nd at 2 in the afternoon. And the locals were looking at me like I was crazy. There's a 1898 photo of the central school and then one of the classrooms outside on the front steps, these front steps of the school. I guess I don't need to mention this big beauty in the background as well. So they really whacked up a lot of old world stone and brick buildings fairly quickly after the fire, it would seem. No mention of where the brick factory came from and who built and owned the brick factory so they could start making these bricks. None of that is mentioned at all in any of those articles. They just basically say, well, we're going to start making them out of brick now there, bud. Oh, for sure there, eh? Let's get at her. Give her. And 6 months, boom, 500 buildings. I would say that they had to bring the bricks in by railroad, but the railroad wasn't finished yet. So I guess they brought them in by boat. Maybe New Westminster had a brick factory that would, be able to handle a few 100 millions of extra bricks. Look at the size of this thing. There's another building attached to it or built up next to it, but look at the size of this. These are these buildings that take up a quarter of a city block. It's probably, I don't know, a department store or who knows what it is, right? A hotel. Still no cars yet at this point, 1898. So we're only 12 years now after the fire. Still in 1898. There's a view from the east side of Granville Street, which is one of their main high streets. You can see the trolleys running along here, or the tram. Looks like it's built up, though. Looks like it might be a viaduct. Looks like this goes down a little bit. Could just be shadow or because it's a crappy photo. But this long building that's curved ends rather abruptly, so maybe there was a larger building between these two at some point. I don't know. But see what I mean about these places weren't just whacked up in 6 months because, hey, we need a pharmacy or a doctor's office and dentist's office. So let's build an office building for all that right after the fire. So we'll just build it very bare bones just to get it up there because it's essential and we need it. No. We're still going to make it all fancy. Still going to put all the tech on it. Either that or this was already here. It looks mud flooded to me because what's going on down here? Why are you going to have big, fancy, embellished archways that only stick up half out of the ground down here? These are almost fancier than these are. Doesn't make any sense. Look at this unusual. The Alhambra Theater, 1899. I just took this, downloaded this photo because, yeah, it's Vancouver. It's relevant, but it's so unusual. I've never seen a building like this before in my life. What in the Sam Steele's going on with these things? It looks like it's clad in wood, but I don't know if it's a wooden building or not. It's, again, my apologies. It's kind of a crummy, very unique. Yeah, it does look like lap siding, like wooden siding. I mean, 3 out of the 3 articles in the top half of the show talked about, lumber mills and so on. So, I mean, the fact that this might be a wooden theater, wood frame, wood clad theater should not be surprising. Okay, I'll go along with that. But what the heck are these things, man? You know how hard they would have to over-engineer the corners of this building just to put up whatever these things are? Because they look heavy and dense as F. They do that as well, Noah. You're right. I live in an older historic neighborhood here in Calgary, and there's a lot of houses that are clad in wood siding, the main floor, and then the second floor is usually wooden shingles, and then the roof is cedar shingles as well. For some reason, they love to do shingles on the second floor. I guess because you're up higher off the ground and it's more time consuming and takes you longer, so there's greater risk to fall and break your neck. I don't know. Doesn't make sense. But I think they did that in the Victorian era rather than painting brick. You have a brick house, you cover it in wood so that, whatever the in fashion, in style colors were when your house was built in 1902 or 1898 or whatever, you could just repaint your house. It's idiots like us that paint beautiful red brick buildings. I don't think people back then painted brick buildings. We come along and we paint signs on the side of brick buildings, like Jimmy's Furniture Store or Drugs or St. Louis Hotel or whatever. This is from 1899, Hastings and Carroll Street. Oh, very nice. A guy here in Hongakuba. That just fits the narrative perfectly. And there's your horse-drawn trolley. Of course, why not? It could be an omnibus, but it looks like a trolley. Although this looks like it might be a parade. So it might be a float. I don't know. It's very confusing. But here's that building again that we looked at. With the curve. This one here. It's this one. Okay, so now the year 1900, we're getting toward the end of the file here. But remember, we're still only 14 years from a fire that basically all but destroyed the entire city of Vancouver in 1886. We're only 14 years down the road. And we're seeing stuff like I told you, these big ones, they're always department stores. Here's Woodward's department store. And then look at whatever this beautiful, almost Moorish looking building is. I have no idea what that is. Now you've got your telegraph and your electric. So it won't be long now when you get electric trolleys. In fact, I think they already had them at this point. I think they were early with the electric trolley in Vancouver. They were way before Calgary, like 10 years before us. Here's the British Columbia Parliament buildings. These aren't the Capitol buildings. Remember, that's the Capitol buildings in Victoria on the island. This is still mainland Vancouver, British Columbia, the year 1900. So again, either this survived the fire, was built after the fire, or was there before the fire, and they're using the fire as a hand wave to explain that, well, we had a big fire, so then we had to have a building boom to replace all the buildings that burnt down. So this is part of that building boom. You know what I mean? I think something like this is old world, and it was there before the fire. I think it was there way before the fire. I think this was there before 1700 and got mud flooded in 1700. And eventually was reclaimed, renovated, and designated as, okay, these are going to be our government buildings for Vancouver, British Columbia. Oh, sorry about that. How's that? Is that a bit better? Always in Canada, anything of significance is going to be Canadian Pacific Railroad, 1900 CP Rail, Canadian Pacific Railway Depot, the main station, the terminus in Vancouver. Because, you know, what you want to do with your train stations is you want to build them to look like castles. Can you hear me? Hello, hello. Testing, 1, 2, 3. I can hear myself on the YouTube page, so. I'll try to speak. Thank you. 5x5. Okay, good. I will try to speak more clearly and directly into the mic. So yeah, you want to have your train station look like a castle with conical domes and turrets for some reason. Even though really trains are just pulling in here and then pulling out here. And then people are boarding and disembarking. I don't know. Enunciate. Yeah, no kidding. Speak up, yeah. Freaking Canadian mushmouth. Oh, another Dominion Day parade. They love their Dominion Day parades. Oh, who doesn't love a parade? Here we are, the year 1900. So July 1st, 1900. This looks like Granville, but I don't know for sure. All I know is I see turrets and conical domes and big, massive stone and brick buildings everywhere. And it's 14 years after the Great Fire. This is the level of tech that we have here too, by the way. Well, no, we have steam because of the railroad. We have the steam cranes and steam shovels. But even those are quite fledgling and rickety looking. Not sure why these tents are here. This is nothing to do with the fire and the tents that were set up. These look more like teepees, so maybe it's some kind of thing to do with the indigenous First Nations of the area. I'm not entirely sure. This is Granville Street, again, 1900. Some kind of parade or gathering going on here. Look at this. I mean, just look how built down it is. 14 years after a fire destroyed the entire city. I know I sound like a broken record. I'm repeating myself. But I can't do enough to drive home the point of how absolutely asinine the entire narrative around the Great Vancouver Fire actually is. It's complete nonsense. And if you believe it, I don't know. I can't help you.
Well, that's just silly.
Silly, yes. Idiotic, yes.
Vancouver and Mount Pleasant, viewed from the tower of the Catholic Church, July 28th, 1900. So we're looking south here. Some nice Victorian and Edwardian homes here. This looks kind of like my neighborhood. Except for my neighborhood, the trees are so big that they grow over the street and touch each other, which is lovely. See, you got a lot of turreted and domed homes along here and churches, but it's still so built out, man. Look at, not to mention on the other side. This is that inlet. This is the Holy Rosary Tower view from 1900. Just going off into the distance. Yeah, that was maybe a power plant in the previous photo, yeah. Or maybe a mill. Could be a flour mill. Or some kind of mill. Because there could be piers and wharfs and stuff here too. But whatever it is, it's got a giant smokestack on it. So yeah, some kind of power plant or factory or facility of some kind for sure, yeah. Huge. All right, Vancouver looking east from the Tower of the Holy Rosary Church. July 28th, 1900. Somebody was kind enough to label these for our convenience. The Flack Building. Look at this beauty. There's the courthouse. Of course, it's gone. Now Victoria Square. Yeah, sure. Knock that down. That's got to go. I'm surprised they didn't let that go in the fire. There's that central school looking all mud flooded. Future site of Oddfellows building. Oh. Got to get the Oddfellows and the Masons in there every time. The arcade here. Okay, so that would be their public market. There's Cordova. There's Hastings, which has now become these areas that many in the chat have been referring to as the zombie part of town, the rough part of town. Looking south from the tower again, same day, same date. Oh, this is the same photo as the other one we looked at. This one's just been labeled. So it's a cement factory. There it is, Portland Cement Factory. It's a good thing they had one of those up and ready to go right after the fire, I guess. Get your brick and cement going. Looking west now from that same Holy Rosary Church Tower, July 28th. Look at this house. Lacey Johnson home. Built 2 years after the fire until 1912. So it only stood for, what is that, 24 years? Are you kidding me? Really? Killing me. Mansard roof on the Hotel Vancouver. Beautiful. Funny how Stanley Park is a wooded area and it didn't burn during the fire. You'd think the fire would just, because they said it leapt from building to building. they, anamorphize it. I can't say that word, but you know what I mean. Where they attribute human or animal characteristics to inanimate objects, or things like water and fire and wind. So they said the fire leapt from building to buildings and trees. Why didn't the fire leap over to where all these highly combustible trees are? You know what I'm saying? Our buddy Dragon Sage in the box. Good to see you there, bud. Howdy. I think this is the last photo in the file anyway here. Yep. That is it. So either in 14 years, all of this was banged up, or as they say, heck, a lot of them were done in 6 months after the fire that destroyed the city. Again, I can see some of these houses, wood frame houses, going up in a year. You get a good construction crew and it's a wood frame home. And if you're not having a full basement, if you're just doing a foundation, like a semi-basement or a root cellar or crawl space type idea, okay, sure. But all of these massive structures that we see, the big factory and, some of the castle-like stuff, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I think they were already there, and I think they used the fire as an excuse to explain away some of this stuff. So as mentioned, I think I'm getting ready to wind this thing down here very shortly, but before I go, again, a reminder, and the link is in the description box below, for my second channel, New West Rewind, where you get vintage footage videos uploaded every Saturday. I usually put it together with music. A lot of times I try to put Canadian content either with the video or the music or both. So if you're not too familiar with Canadian land up here, there, bud, then you can get yourself some Canadian education. So stuff like I show in the mid-show breaks here in the live show, that's the sort of thing you're going to see on New West Rewind there every Saturday. Every Friday here for Boots on the Ground, and every Sunday for the live show. I'm taking next week off. All right, I've had my channel for 5 years. I've been doing live streams for almost all that entire time. 4.5-ish years. I have not taken a break. So next week, no live stream. Taking the week off. I will do a premiere on the Friday Boots on the Ground so we can catch up and chit-chat in the live chat in the box during the premiere on Friday. But there will be no live show next Sunday. But I'll be back the following Sunday. So again, links for everything below that we covered. And again, as mentioned earlier in the show, the director's cut, the re-upload, the redo, if you will, of my documentary film, Reset 1700, coming up here very shortly in the next couple of weeks. Just giving it a final once-over, giving it a nice polish, some turtle wax to get it out onto the showroom floor. That I will put up as a live, of course, so we can watch it together. As mentioned, I have another couple of projects in the works, slightly longer form videos than the 15-ish minute Boots on the Ground videos. A little bit of deeper dives into things that have been suggested to me here on the channel from a lot of you in the chat, a lot of you watching. I've been getting tons of emails with suggesting hitting up different locations or covering different topics. So I really, really appreciate that. Keep them coming. You can reach me, as mentioned, on my social media below, as well as my email address, newwestreset@gmail.com. So if you have an idea for a show, something you want me to cover, definitely let me know. I'll take care of it. I'll get her done. I'll give you a shout out on the whole thing too. Also, links below for my location map, New West Reset location map, courtesy of Cousin Vinny on Freemason. You open that up and it opens up the goggle machine when you click on that link. And it shows everywhere in Alberta that I've done boots on the ground these past 5 years. You just click on my icon and it takes you to that spot. Little side panel pops up with an address and a thumbnail, and you can just click on the link and watch the video straight from there if you like. And if you see multiple locations joined with a yellow line, that's where I've done a mudflood walkabout or a meetup, and we've gone and checked out several buildings all in the same video. So link below for that as well. Again, as mentioned, BitChute, Instagram, and of course, as always, Rumble and YouTube. If you'd like to make a donation to the channel, your support is certainly not necessary, but greatly appreciated. It all goes back into the channel. I'm looking at getting a new gimbal here pretty soon. The old one's starting to get a little temperamental. So that sort of thing. If you do make a donation to the PayPal, really, really appreciate that as mentioned. And if you share with me what size you wear and give me your return address, your mailing address, I'll send you a New West Reset t-shirt or maybe a Schmutz trucker hat, a ball cap. Just let me know. And with that, that is going to seal the deal here today for Frankie, New West Reset, and New West Reset Live. Episode 183 here today, the Great Vancouver Fire of 1886. So until the next one, take care out there and have yourselves a good one. All right? Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
It's a mystery. It's a mystery wrapped in a riddle inside an enigma.